Hi, I'm Jim Proce. I'm the Assistant City Manager for the City of Rowlett. If you haven't heard by now, for several months the city has been talking about a planned bond election for May of 2015. Recently we had a couple of open meetings to take the opportunity to invite folks to come down to City Hall and hear about the issue. In the event that you didn't get a chance to attend either of these meetings, well, all's not lost, as we took the opportunity to record the presentation and put it together so you can view it at your convenience. Good evening. How's everybody doing tonight? I'm Jim Proce. I'm the Assistant City Manager. And tonight I've asked folks to come out and hear a little presentation about this bond election that we've been talking about. And just a little background of how we got to where we are today. Over the last year or so, we've had discussions with the City Council about infrastructure needs and a variety of different types of projects. And back in June of 2014, we had a council retreat, and one of the things that we discussed is, like, going forward, what are we going to do with future funding for bonds? And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the details of what we got. So at that point, we were given some direction to go forth and form a task force. And those folks have been meeting periodically over the last couple of months, maybe 2 months or so, to talk about different projects and the needs of the community and those sorts of things. I'm going to talk a little bit about that as well. So tonight, I'm going to tell you a little bit about that task force and what they're doing and what they're tasked with, some of the challenges that we have encountered, and then we're going to talk about that. And some of the historical issues, because I've been here for 3.5 years now, and I often get calls about things that happened in the past that predate me. So I had to do a lot of research to kind of find out, like, what was the history around here, and why is everybody always yelling at me, you know? So I did a little bit of that, and I'm going to talk about that. And whenever you do a bond initiative of any sort, obviously people are going to say, well, how much is this going to cost? And what does this mean to me as a citizen and that lives here and pays taxes in Rowlett? So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And about input. We're still soliciting input because we want to know what else is out there, and this opportunity to still influence that process, whether it's a project or a street or something to do with development. So we're going to be talking about those types of things and how you can provide us some input that we will share everything with those folks and ultimately with the City Council. So first off, to kind of define what this is, what is the task force and what are they doing and what's their purpose and that sort of stuff. So generally speaking, the task force it's an ad hoc committee, and this is different than most of the committees like planning and zoning. That's a standing committee that continues on and on. This is more of a one-purpose group of folks appointed by the City Council for a specific period of time, and it meets the same criteria. We post all the agenda, the minutes, and run it similarly to a lot of the other task force. It's not dissimilar to a previous bond council or like charter review committee and those sorts of things that are created for one purpose, specific periods of time. So that's kind of what that's. It has a sunset provision, so it will stand down when they're done doing their work and dissolve. And I am the staff liaison, and there's a number of other folks who are also involved with this. This is a list of people. You may know some of these folks. Eric Ernst is the chair. Martha Brown is the vice chair, and there's a list of other folks who have been participating with this since its inception. And the council liaison are Michael Gallups and Tammy, and a number of staff that have been involved with gathering information and doing some of the work and presenting to the group. Generally speaking, they're tasked with developing a recommendation to be brought forth to the City Council. So part of that process is deciding what kind of projects we're going to talk about, and and ranking them and prioritizing them, and how we're going to schedule them, and all the bits and pieces that go together with coming up with a slate of projects to be discussed at a City Council meeting in the future. And again, like I said, once they're done, they will stand down. to define what CIP is, and there's a whole bunch of words up here, and I'm not going to read it to you, but generally speaking, capital improvement programs are kind of complicated, and there's a lot of things that go into the planning and the execution thereof. In many cases, people say, well, what are you going to do with the money if we give it to you? And it's not for things like, fixing vehicles, hiring people, painting the building, those types of things that are normally operational of nature. This is just big ticket items, require a lot of planning, sometimes engineering work that goes into, and to the point where, they have things that result in a long-term asset. Usually costs a lot of money. In some cities, it's like $25,000 or greater long-term asset. Things like buildings, like this building or the community center, or things like major road reconstruction, utility lines, the water tower that you see going up down the street, that would fall into a similar category as what we're looking at here today. Generally speaking, this city has had a lot of challenges, and today we still have a lot of projects, a lot of items that remain unfunded. Things like streets and alleys, parks, some of our facilities, and drainage. And just to kind of give you order of magnitude, the alleys is a big ticket item. How many people here have alley? We got a couple, got half, more than half, maybe half, okay? The alleys alone that are in disrepair total about $27 million. And so that's a large sum of money. That's something that we don't have sitting in the bank ready to go out there and fix those things. There's a lot of debate about those things because for everybody that didn't raise their hand, that I'm assuming you don't have an alley. So when it comes to funding alleys, which we, as somebody who's built 600 miles of road in my career, roads and alleys are like a passion to me. I'm very, very interested in doing this type of work. But I don't have an alley, so when I go home and say, hey, we're going to raise taxes, and we're not raising taxes, so don't shoot the messenger. But if you said to me, do you want to pay for an alley? My wife said, well, I don't want to pay for that. Why do we have that? We don't have that. So we have those kinds of challenges to kind of overcome to say, okay, how do we take care of the systems that have been entrusted to us as a public servant? So, some of our facilities, drainage alone. Back in 2006 in this city, there was a stormwater study that was done. It identified over 250 projects. To date, I think about 70 of them might have been addressed, and there's about that many more that are of concern. That adds up to millions of dollars, just those drainage projects. And they are not highly visible in some cases because they may not affect you, but they affect others in our community. So there are those types of things that are still out there that remain unfunded and unplanned for, basically, even though we have a study that shows the need, little or nothing has been done with some of these things over the years. And streets alone, looking at our database, and we have an extensive database of information when it comes to roads, there's well over $100 million worth of needs. There's probably $45 million worth of what I would refer to as more urgent needs, and probably $6 or $7 worth of what I would refer to as immediate needs. So again, large sums of money. One of the things that this community's been faced with is growth, and you see the second bubble here, planning for infrastructure for future growth. And there's a lot of things that are going on in this community, and building that's going on, things that are coming our way, and it's coming. At some point, it's coming. So we have to be prepared for that, and how to take care of that, and how to manage that so it doesn't get out of control. If going unchecked, unbridled growth can be problematic, and we run into those problems here in this community. I have found many, many things in my journey here that have left us, in a position where when the growth occurred, things that happened 10 or 15 years ago just now come to the surface. Things that were not necessarily built correctly, or maybe they weren't managed, or maybe they weren't, because there was just so much going on, and the community at that time was not ready to receive that deluge. Well, we are ready, and we are managing it, and we're keeping our eyes on the ball for what's to come. The other challenge we have is the previous bond money. And everybody's like, okay, well, you know, we had the last bonds that we did, not revenue bonds for utilities, but the other bonds, goes back to 2006. When I came to work for this city 3.5 years ago, there was $44 million in the bank. And we have now spent it. It's gone. We're finishing up all of those projects, things like the water tower, and that you see down the street, utility improvements, road improvements, projects that have been completed over the last 3 years since I've been here. So there's no more bond money sitting in the bank anymore. We're at the end of that journey. And the last one up here is about the impacts of drought. And the soils that we have in this region are very, and for those of you who've been here for a long time, when I got to Texas, I had never seen anything where you had to water around your house all the time to keep the floors from cracking. And I thought, how bizarre is this? And, you know, well, we do it, and we all do it, you know, if we want to take care of our investment, if you will. And, but we're not watering everything. We're not watering the streets, and we're not watering the sewer lines, and we're not, well, obviously, because you don't, you know, that's really doesn't sound reasonable to any of us. But yet we've sustained so much damage to our infrastructure as a result of shrinking soils and moving things that it brings a cost to maintaining the infrastructure. Things that last, PVC pipe in some communities can last up to 100 years. Not in this town, not in this region, and for that matter, you know, because the soils move so much. So as you can see, there's a number of things that weigh into our decision making when we try to decide, okay, what needs to be, you know, taken care of, and what do we, you know, put our attention to. So this group that's meeting, or had met earlier today, that the task force, was kind of generally looking at different types of projects, you know, dealing with failing infrastructure, and what about growth, and a lot of discussion about alleys and sidewalks and thoroughfares. And these are just kind of general topics. These are not like specific projects, of things that we had been talking about over the last couple of months. And you know, some of these things may or may not make it to the list, but they're just things that were intended to kind of spark the conversation, and to talk about, you know, well, what does this community want, and what does this community need, and what does this community deserve, and those types of questions. And in every category, we say, well, you know, we got to talk about growth because it has an effect on our streets, and it has an effect on, you know, our parks, and the availability of the facilities for the different things that people expect when they move to a community. So, and generally speaking, if we started adding this up, I could probably tell you that I can come up with $300 million worth of ideas. I've gone out and spoken with all of the boards and commissions, and every one of those boards and commissions has a little bit different focus because, you know, whatever their passion might be. And so, you know, they're also contributing. They're giving us ideas, and they're giving us things to consider. And that's what tonight is about, is to kind of educate folks on, you know, what we've been talking about, and then ask you for your feedback and what kind of, you know, give us some input. And I'm going to show you how to do that in a little bit here. But one of the things that came up is that we noticed, you know, in good communities, you have things that are just not roads and, you know, sewer lines and water pipes and like that tower down the street. You plan for growth, you do things like that, and you also have initiatives for quality of life. So that was one of the topics that we discussed in great detail about, you know, what are the things that we need, and what does that look like, and you know, and we get to, you know, things like, you know, what do we do at a park? You know, good communities have parks, you know, so do we need more parks? You know, recently I've been talking with some folks about soccer. Well, you know, all the soccer people, they want more fields. All of them do. They says that we don't have enough facilities to meet those needs. And so, you know, those types of things are online for you know, for consideration in this initiative. As you can see from the list here, there's several identified projects so far. Merritt Road Interconnector, Kids Kingdom, Dow Rockets 66 intersection, and these are the types of projects that are being considered by the task force to make the final list. And if you have something that you want to add, we need to certainly know about it. It's important that you, as folks that live here as well, kind of chime in and say, well, you know, I really, you know, there's this project here I need you to pay attention to. It might be something that we don't know about. Now, we've done a lot of work, And we've taken all those folks out and showed them all sorts of stuff. We've showed them roads, we've showed them parks, we've showed them buildings, we've showed them all the different things. We took them on a tour. We spent a lot of time doing it, more than one trip. We had an initial trip, and the ones who couldn't make it, we had another trip, and then we had another trip. So we, you know, to make sure that they, you know, when something like this comes up, they're going to go look at it. And several of them have gone out on their own and going out and looking at these things, so which is good because they're very invested in the process. So if you don't see what you want up there, that's not a problem. We can add it, but it's all good. We want to make sure that everybody's heard. Which leads me to the next topic, historical issues. And a week doesn't go by where I don't get questioned about this. Phone calls, citizens that I walk, you know, come up to City Hall, people that have emailed me periodically about different issues, people that I've become on a first name basis because they say, when's my road going to get built? You know, and I get a call. There's one particular woman, she calls me every time I see her. She, well, where am I? Well, you're at the top of the list, but there's no money. Well, okay. Well, when's the money coming in? I'm like, well, come on down and talk with the whole group and make yourself heard. But it goes back to 2006. And in 2006, there was a bond election. And I'm going to blow this up so maybe you can see it. But basically, there was 4 propositions on the ballot. And there was, and you can see there's a parks thing, expanded library service and civic auditorium, thoroughfare revitalization, and lakeshore reclamation project. And these projects were proposed and they're $31 million, and it went to a bond election and it failed. So let's see. So basically, that was in 06, $31.5 million. 46 days later, the city issues bonds for $38.3 million. So everybody that calls me on the phone is yelling at me about this, and I'm like, well, I wasn't here, so I'm really not sure what you're talking about, but I'll look into it, and this is what we find. But they weren't for the same projects, because going back to this, none of this ever happened, to I can tell. There's not a single thing up on that list that ever got built or created, and if there is, correct me if I'm wrong, but to my knowledge, none of these things happened. Looking further back, over the period of the prior 3 years, 3 to 4 years, $106.9 million of bonds were issued of a variety of different kinds. But only 15% of those bonds were voted on. All the rest of them were just done without asking anybody's permission, aside from the city council. And I want to make that clear. It's not that, you know, the staff did this. This was discussion, staff, councils, at the time issued all these bonds, and you can see, you know, 10 million in 2003, 29 million and 29 million and 38 million for a total of almost $107 million. And like I mentioned earlier, when I got here, there was still $44 million of this money that had remained unspent, planned, programmed, but not spent. A lot of things engineered, ready to build, or just starting up. So over the last three years, we've done a lot of construction. But we're at the end of this. We're running on fumes right now on the remaining stuff. And the next big question is, okay, so you can identify how much money you got. What did you do with it? And I get that question. It's like, okay, where's the money go? So we went back and we looked, and you know, over $100 million of a variety of different types of projects. 100 major road projects, city facilities, parks, utility projects, and PGB betterments. And PGB betterments, to define that, are all, that highway went in there, but there's a lot of things that the city asked for that were kind of above and beyond what NTTA was responsible for, like the extra fire hydrants and upgrading water and sewer lines along there. So if there was a 4-inch line there, well, if they were going to interrupt that service, they were going to put back a 4-inch line. What we needed is like a 12-inch line, because, you know, there was different things that were going to happen, or we knew were going to happen. So a lot of those types of upgrades, larger water lines, and all of those things that had happened. That alone, that line item alone is about $3.5 million. So we can account for all the money, all $106, $107 million worth of projects that were all done. So all of these different projects, this is where the past money went. So, and this leads me to the next part, is how much is this going to cost and how did we pay for it? So Initially, we're looking at an approximately $25 million initiative to your point, okay? And that's out in the public, it's up on our website, and a 3-year implementation. And what we're looking at is that's a small amount of money. If you gave me $300 million, I'd have difficulty spending that much money. I don't have the staff, the support structure in place to spend this huge amount of money. That was part of the problem in the last initiative. You had $100 million, you didn't have enough resources to manage it. So you needed to either hire more people, and you said, we'll get more consultants. Well, that doesn't necessarily work because somebody's got to keep their eyes on those guys too, because they're not doing it for free, they're doing it to make money. And not to say anything bad about consultants, because we have some very good consultants, but you still have to manage them. They're an extension of your staff. So I can get 10 more consultants, that's like having 10 more employees. So it really does, we're trying to do this within our means, basically, and for one. And for two, we're trying to do, to your point, a smaller initiative, because to kind of build some trust in the community. And the big punchline is the little purple bubble here that says no tax increase. So everybody's like, well, how can you spend $25 million and it's not going to cost anything? Well, that's where we've done the analysis. And initially, what this looks like is this is our debt schedule weighed against years and different types of debt and totaled up. And what we have is debt that's going to be retired. And so if you look at the big black cloud that's flying there, that's the biggest chunk, right? That is going to start to wane off. It starts to decline because old debt is getting paid for. That gives us capacity to issue new bonds. And you say, well, why do you got to issue new bonds? I said, well, and I always kind of go back to everything I talk about, I use a house analogy. And how many people live in a house? Well, everybody's going to raise their hand. And how many people buy that house one wall at a time? Or maybe your rent or your mortgage is $1,500 a month. Do you build your house $1,500 at a time? You know, we're going to build a door this week, and you know, next month I'm going to put up a wall, and then the month after that I'm going to get me a toilet, and you know, and so on and so forth. No, you go out and you get a mortgage within your means, and you pay that off over 20 or 30 years. Well, this is a similar kind of issue. So if you look at this same curve, and we look at our bonding capacity right now, we could, you know, based upon what is going to happen in the retirement of the existing debt, we could bond $76.5 million based on our last set of forecasts without having to raise the taxes. But if we went to the voters and said, I want $76 million, we might not get a good outcome. They might not be so receptive, and I have to ramp up to spend that much money. It takes a lot of work to spend $76 million, a lot of planning, a lot of engineering, and again, I need resources to manage this. So our objective was to do something like this, where we come back in 3 years. We're going to do, to your point, $25 million, give or take, and if it passes, and then prove it up. So in that 3-year period, whatever projects wind up being approved by the task force and the city council jointly would go to the voters, and they decide whether or not to pass that initiative. And should it pass, then we would work and get those $25 million worth of projects designed, bid out, and as much of it constructed or under construction with that first 3-year period, and be very open and public about it, and so that everybody can see, you gave me $25 million, and I'm going to do what I said I'm going to do. And I can tell you right now, if I don't accomplish that, I will leave. You won't have to fire me, I'll quit, okay? And I made the same promise to this community that I made to the last community. Well, the day I can't make it better than I found it, I will leave. And you won't have to ever fire me, because I'll leave on my own if I don't do what I say I'm going to do. That's my commitment, and that's who I am. That's how I, you know. So this is kind of the strategy. So 3 years from now, that orangey color, and 3 years from then, the green color, and so on and so forth. But now, as we build community trust, maybe those get combined, and we do a bigger initiative and take care of more of those alleys and take care of more of those roads and fix those parks and all the other things that are going to come before us on that list. And that's kind of the strategy that I'd like to put forth to the community. Here's the other question. So everybody says, okay, well, how do I give you my 2 cents? Because I have some ideas, and I really think that you need to fix this or build this, and we've had some good input. from folks. And basically, if you go to our website, go to rowlett.com, there's a video up there that kind of talks about how you can give input, so you can go there and see that. And there's a couple of forms out there. Now I printed out some forms here. There's, like if you don't want to get online and do it, you can take a piece of paper, fill it out, and give it to me before you leave, or take it home. Or if you want more, I'll run you 100 of them. You can do it all by, some people want to write stuff down, some people want to go online. And I can show you how this all works. But on this website, everything that this group is considering or doing will be posted at one particular point or another. As we're developing things, they're gone. Every presentation that they've seen is on there. Every meeting agenda is on there. Every document that we create is going to be placed out here for everybody to see, because it's, you know, it's everybody's information. And so we want to make sure that everybody knows that this stuff is out here. The video, he's taping me now. Hello, everybody at home. I'm saying hello to the camera. This is almost live TV. So everything's going to be up here. And as we go further along, we're going to continue to populate this. And then this will morph into something else. So if this passes in May, then this will be the site where you can go find out what's going on, because projects will be posted here. Here's the thing, status reports, those types of things, how we're spending your money, where it's going, what the expectation is for completion and updates, and how to get hold of the right person who can give you the answers to your questions when you have a question, versus just calling down here and you know, having to find somebody. If somebody's managing a project, their name's going to be in here. You're going to be able to find them. I want you to be able to reach out and touch whoever is in the middle of anything that we're doing. So there's a series of meetings that are happening. They're all public meetings, and for the most part, when we have public meetings, there's public comment. There's some work sessions with the council and the task force together that are planned, and there's council work sessions that are planned, and there's a council action that's planned. The joint meeting is January 13th with the city council and the task force. And the adoption of the ballot language is February 17th, and that's a statutory thing. That's not something that we can decide. That slate of projects has to be decided by that date and approved by the city council, otherwise it doesn't happen. So that group has been working very hard to kind of get all these things in order. And as we've been getting feedback, we will be filtering things to them so they can look at it. Appreciate your time. Thank you for coming out and listening. So there you have it, a brief overview of the CIP Task Force and the May 2015 bond election. There are several ways you can provide your input or suggestions, so please let us know. And remember the 3 points. Please vote on May 9th, 2015, $25 million of community investment projects, and most of all, no tax increase. If you would like more info or you have questions, please don't hesitate to contact me. Thank you.